Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am a fish harvester, and today we will explore clam fishing with the fisherman. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. And now, let's get started. The story of the scallop fishery sparked my interest, and I knew that it was necessary to document both the dayboat and trip boat fishery when covering the Atlantic coast's fisheries. The stories and photographs in this piece reflect my experiences on the water on two scallop boats, a dayboat and a trip boat. Both of these boats were targeting the same product using similar gear but were subject to different regulations. To create an all-encompassing view of the fishery, it was necessary to cover both types of boats. The Atlantic sea scallop fishery took off in the 1950s when Norwegian immigrants started dragging in the waters off of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Environmental conditions and lack of management created dramatic supply swings in the fishery until the early 2000s. That's when the industry collaborated with federal regulators to change data collection and management. The fishery rebounded and was declared fully rebuilt in 2001. For the last 2 decades, the fishery has been among the most lucrative in the world, with the Atlantic coast landings at Placopecten Magellanicus valued at more than $500 million. The most recent stock assessment in 2018 revealed that the fishery is not being overfished and is not subject to overfishing. The rebound of the Atlantic scallop and the profitability of the fishery has made it one of the world's best success stories in fisheries management. Devon Lee, a crew member on the Italian Princess, prepares the rigging on the dredge as Captain Charles Wiscott drops it overboard for another tow. The dredges went into the water at first light, and while pulling in the first tow, a hydraulic line on the port side went up, spilling hydraulic oil all over the upper deck. Wiscott was able to secure the port side dredge on the deck of the boat. Wiscott hailed his brother, Jake, captain of the Sea Quest out of Cape May, for spare parts to fix the hydraulic lines. Jake Wiscott made his way over to us and was able to transfer spare parts he had on board. Even with one of the dredges out of commission, Wiscott was able to keep the deck full of scallops and his crew working. During their 18 to 20-hour shifts, the captain and crew spent most of their time cutting and washing scallops. While cutting the meats, the crew graded the scallops into 12, 20 count and 10 count, separating them into 2 buckets. After loading 700 pounds of ice onto the boat at Martin Fish Company, we came out of Ocean City Inlet at midnight into a 4 to 6 foot northeast swell left over from a 2-day blow. The captain and crew took turns on watch and tried to sleep in the 4 bunks in the bow during the run out. After the scallops from the second tow were cut, iced and packed in 50-pound cheesecloth bags, Tedford dropped the dredge over for a third and final tow. Within 5 minutes, the dredge was full again. Once the scallops and the dredge were on board and secured, we started the 4.5-hour run back to Ocean City. Tedford and the crew cut scallops on the way in. Approximately 7,000 scallops in the 10-20 count size made up the 600-pound limit of cut meats. They fetched about $12 a pound at the dock. At sea with mid-Atlantic trip and daybook fleets that haul back world-famous, lucrative and abundant Atlantic sea scallops. After photographing nearly all of the inshore fisheries on my home waters of the Chesapeake Bay, I wanted to branch out and begin my documentation of fisheries along the Atlantic coast. Once you've reached your scallops limit, it's time to clean them. Typically, cleaning scallops is a more difficult and time-consuming process than scallops. As shown in the photos, the inside of the scallop was quite messy. There's no good way to say this, but essentially you need to remove the intestines and keep the meat. That little white muscle is what you're after. Everything else is trash. Most people will catch scallops and then return to the marina, dock, boat ramp, whatever it is, before cleaning the scallops. This is why during scallop season you will see people sitting on banks, docks and boats, shelling scallops, and even some young entrepreneurs offering to clean your scallops for a small fee. This is the method I like. By placing the scallops on ice before returning to the dock, you give the scallops time to open. Scallops will close themselves when you catch them, most of the time, as a defense mechanism. Putting them on ice and allowing them to unfold for a while will save you a lot of cleanup time when you get back to land.
Shellfish are a wonderful food source, and we have perfect conditions to grow them here, said Stillwagon. They don't call me Captain Clam for nothing. I get a lot of interest when I tell people I'm a shellfish farmer. People want to know how many there are and how many I harvest. I hardly ever meet people who don't like clams, but even if they don't, they can appreciate that they take care of the environment by filtering the water. Having shellfish in the water improves water quality. Scallops can be traced back 300 million years in fossil form, and there are more than 300 living species in the world today. The two commercial varieties farmed in Scotland are the king scallop, Pecten maximus, and the smaller queen scallop, Equipecten opercularis. Both thrive around the west coast in the sheltered waters of its sandy-bottomed sea lochs and many islands. Scottish scallops are cultivated from wild-caught spat, which is collected in mesh bags suspended in the sea. As their natural predators follow the same life cycle, the settled spat have first to be sorted before being placed in lantern baskets where they grow naturally for about 1.5 to 2 years. The queen scallops are then harvested whilst the king scallops are placed out on the seabed to grow for another 2 to 3 years before being retrieved by divers. Catching scallops is quite simple, as is hunting for Easter eggs. Go out there and find me. It's really just that simple. There are designated areas in Florida known as scallop hotspots, primarily along Florida's nature coast. Your best bet is to go to one of these areas of Florida like Homosassa, Crystal River or Steinhatchee. These areas in Florida year after year have plenty of scallops for everyone. Sure, some years are better than others in terms of scallops, but usually a limit can be reached in terms of scallops with all your gear. Dive along the surface, often in 3 to 6 feet of water in search of elusive clams. Scallops move in an upside-down fashion, like a lobster. However,
Most of the time, the clam will be right in front of your eyes ready to eat. There is no secret method to catching oysters like catching lobsters. Simply pick up the scallops and put them in a mesh bag and keep kicking those flippers. The key to finding the limit of scallops is to cover as much ground as possible. So keep those fins moving while you scoop out the scallops. I usually try to grab the scallop from behind, because on rare occasions the scallop will start swimming away when it sees your hand approaching. You won't have to get your finger pinned by a clam many times before you learn this trick. Take it from me and many other clams that you can hear scream in their snorkel when they are clamped. Clams, oysters and bivalves, oh my. With so many species of shellfish in the sea, you might think that clams and scallops are really different only in the type of food they're served with. However, there are many interesting differences between these two bivalve mollusks. In this article, we will show you how to distinguish between scallops and clams. We will also give you tips to differentiate them from skills and abilities. Read on to learn more about these interesting sea creatures. Scallops usually live in deeper water than clams. Both clams and oysters are bivalve mollusks that live in the ocean. This means they have two shells connected together by a hinge. Clams tend to live in tidal zones, or land areas adjacent to the sea. We crouched down in the sand to take our minds off the storm. Scallops typically live on the ocean floor and are typically found at depths of 200 to 900 feet. Some species of clams live in freshwater. Unlike mussels and clams, both mussels and oysters live on rocky shores. Scallops have ribbons on the edges, while the edges of clams are gentle. Both clams and scallops are round and triangular in shape, so it can be difficult to tell apart at first. However, scallops have a distinctive band border along the lip of their shell. 1. The edges of the clams are cleaned and completely rounded. They also tend to be broader and more educationally shaped than messages. This research aims to determine the effect of operating costs at sea, experience at sea, and length of time at sea on the income of fishermen in the Kamal Muara village, North Jakarta. The method used in this research is a quantitative method. The reachable population in this study were all fishermen in the Kamal Muara village area, North Jakarta, namely a total of 200 fishermen. The 67 fishermen were randomly selected for the sampling, and a questionnaire was used to gather the data. This study used multiple regression analysis as its method of analysis. The results of this study indicate that operational costs have a positive effect of 0,515 and are significant on fishermen's income. Experience at sea has a positive and significant effect of 0,033 on fishermen's income. Likewise, there is a positive effect of 0.474 and a significant relationship between the length of time at sea and the income of fishermen, which means that each additional length of time at sea will increase the total income of fishermen by 474%. Simultaneously, operational costs, experience at sea, and length of time at sea has a positive and significant influence on fishermen's income. Keywords: fishermen's income, long time at sea, operational costs. Sailing. Indonesia is an archipelagic country which has a wide area with around 17.500 islands. Indonesian people live in various areas, such as mountainous areas and coastal areas. Communities living in mountainous and coastal areas are very dependent on the natural resources in their area. Indonesia's natural resources are enormous, both on land and at sea. One of the natural resources that has economic potential is marine resources, with the area of the country of Indonesia, which is more than 2/3 of the sea or. Considering that Indonesia is a country with the largest sea area, we can use this potential to increase the income of people who live in coastal areas, namely fishing communities whose economic life is tied to marine resources, especially with fish as the main producer. With such potential marine and fisheries resources, it is not surprising that many Indonesians have livelihoods related to fisheries and marine. As a maritime country, most of Indonesia's coastal residents depend on fisheries to make a living and fulfill their daily lives. Talking about the life of coastal communities will definitely come into contact with fishing communities. According to the Fisheries Law No. 7 of 2016, fishermen are people whose main job is catching fish. The method of cleaning scallops is an ongoing debate between veteran local scallop keepers and beginners. Dusting may sound desolate, but it really works. Of course, you won't want to grab your mom's 9-pound Oreck vacuum. Instead, go and buy a small store-bought vacuum like this one, also known as a dust/dry vacuum. A small vacuum cleaner in the store will work like a magician and suck all the scallops out, leaving you with just pearly flesh. The manual method works just like the vacuum method, except that you do everything with a level. Pulling them out is simple, and they will shorten right away, leaving you with the meat. Check out the video at the end of this post to see it in action. Thank you for your interest in our tour company. I have two different charts that I can show you. The first link I am sending this is for those who have never been on a cruise. It comes with a local guide member who is always ready to help with anything they are looking for, as well as collect as much as possible themselves.